my senior sem is about bullying and the psychology behind it and why people bully. My teachers were Miss Hood and Miss Blondia, and my advisor was Mr. Michelle. So my introduction. My thesis statement was, the causes of bullying center around understanding how rejection, home life, and stereotypes influence teens. My arguments are that rejection, home life, and stereotypes play a very important role in why people bully and how it affects them. So, rejection. So the first part of my paper talks about searching for the validation of yourself from your peers, because if you can't get that validation from yourself, you're going to want it from other people. It's mainly because you feel insecure, unsure about who you are, and so you want validation from somebody else. And also, basically every single group or clique has their own set of rules that if you feel like you go against those rules or you don't follow them, you'll be alone with no friends, and as humans, that's the most scary thing for us. So what happens in the brain when you're rejected is increased activity in the dorsal anterior colliculate, which is a region of your brain that responds to physical pain. So, as far as your brain is concerned, it can't tell the difference between emotional pain and physical pain. And there have been studies shown that they took a group of people that had just suffered an emotional loss or an emotional pain, and they gave them Tylenol. And it showed that the next day they actually felt better, which I found amazing. Like, could you imagine if you're going through heartbreak that you could take a Tylenol and suddenly not feel 100% better, but feel better than you did before? And then I talked about primal instincts. So there was a point where if you didn't live in a group and you were ostracized and out on your own, there was a chance that you would die. It lowered your chances of survival. So you had to adjust to your surroundings and be able to stay within that group no matter what, because you didn't want to be ostracized. And then I talked about home life and how kids who come from unstable homes are more likely to be bullies because that's modeled for them. I talk about how parents have a bigger effect than it seems that they think they have on their children, because if you model behaviors like shoving or hitting or any sort of physical punishment or abuse, it can teach your child to solve their problems through aggression. And if they think, oh, well, mom and dad did that, so clearly it's okay for me to do that, well, then that's not really helpful, because you're just teaching your kid that somehow physical aggression is a way to get out your anger. And then I talk about empathy. And empathy is something huge, because home is where empathy is either learned or not learned, and school is where your lessons come out. So the definition of somebody with violent social behavior that lacks empathy is a psychopath. Now, this isn't saying that all psychopaths are bullies or all bullies have to be psychopaths. It's just saying that there's some sort of correlation between the two. And this is connected to, okay, so when individuals who are psychopaths imagine others in pain, researchers have found that brain areas necessary to feel that empathy don't become active. So if that part of your brain just isn't working, then you physically cannot step into another person's shoes and feel what they're feeling. You just can't do it. And then I talk about the feeling of powerlessness. So if you're in a home environment or a situation where you do feel powerless, where you have no control over what is going on, you'll try to find that power from school. Like, you can have an effect on how somebody else is feeling or how their day is going, especially if you know what will trigger them or what will make their day worse. So I can't control what's going on in my life, but I know how to make their life awful. Or I know how to make myself feel more powerful by showing that I know how to control you. So I talked about that. So part of my senior sem product was doing interviews with people, and so a lot of the kids here have actually left their schools because of they've gotten bullied, or they have stories where they have been bullied at home. And for me, it's really tragic for me to think of that. And I just want to thank all of the people who participated in that for putting yourself out there, letting me talk to you, giving me an opportunity to put this in my PowerPoint. So most of you know Max Hamilton. He is a junior here, and he talked to me about feelings of powerlessness, feeling like you have no control over what is going on in your home life. So this is in my wee video, but I just wanted to show you guys a small clip of what we talked about. And it's not working, that's helpful. Miss Diamond. Okay, round two.
When you think about it, like, what are some of the feelings that you remember, like, feeling, like?
I mean, a lot of it was pain and fear, because at home, you know, you're supposed to feel safe, and it's just you have this idea of what you're supposed to feel like, and as a kid, you don't feel like that, and you feel very afraid.
Did you ever feel powerless?
Oh, of course. I mean, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Getting bullied by someone twice your size and 4 times your age, it's not really fair.
Mm-hmm.
So Max talks about this sort of image that we have about what a family is supposed to look like. You're supposed to feel loved, you're supposed to feel safe in that environment, and when you don't feel that way, it's really, really hard for you. Because everybody else feels that way. You look around you and everybody else has a perfect family except for you. So, and then my third argument was stereotypes. So perception plays a key role here. So from what I've seen, a lot of the adults in this community really handle well situations that involve bullying, but part of it is perception. If you don't know exactly what happened in that situation, it's very, very hard to be objective because you could be targeting the wrong person. You could think that you're talking to the victim, or you could think that you're talking to the bully, but if you really don't know what's going on, it could be completely switched. Or you could make an assumption saying that this kid bullied this kid yesterday, so it must be him that bullied. So it's really hard in those situations. You have to make sure that you have the full story, that you 100% know what's going on. And then I talk about gender. So I'm sure almost all of you have seen the movie Mean Girls. So when I asked around, I asked people if when they thought about a bully, if they thought guys or girls were bullies more. And 98% of the responses that I got were girls. And people seem to think that girls just love drama. Which, for the most part, I mean, we do. But I mean, research shows that males bully more than females. Which I find to be really amazing because in some situations, you look at a guy and a girl and you assume in some ways that the girl is the one that instigated it. That in some ways the girl's the one that wanted the drama without thinking that just maybe the guy wanted the drama too. Like, blow your mind. So part of the reason why guys bully more is because of socially constructed views. The boys will be boys kind of thing. Like, no. When we socialize boys with the idea that they must be dominant over each other, or that they have to fight each other in order to enhance their masculinity, we enhance the very tendencies that lead to bullying. So the reason that guys bully more is half our fault, because we come up with those terms like, oh, he's bullying that kid, but it's just because he's a guy, so it's okay. Like, it's just not okay. And then I talk about popularity. So people seem to think that it's normally popular kids picking on kids that don't have any friends, but studies actually show that kids who are popular end up getting bullied more. Now, this isn't saying that this is always true, it's just out of like a sea full of people, normally popular kids get bullied more. And this made a lot of sense to me because popular kids are on display. If somebody popular does something stupid, everybody knows about it and everybody's judging them about it. And somebody else who may not have as high of a social status, are they going to gain social status by bullying somebody who's at their same level? No, they're going to aim for somebody who's at a higher level so that it can bring them up. You know what I'm saying? And I also talked about how sometimes in certain situations, if a popular kid bullies somebody with a lower social status, it's seen as completely horrible and awful, which it is, but suddenly if somebody with a lower status bullies a popular kid, it's okay. Well, you don't know what that popular kid's going through, but you assume that because they have more friends or because they're in a better situation, that they can handle it and that they can shoulder it a lot easier than this other kid who doesn't have as many friends. And that's a hard assumption to make because, again, you really don't know what that kid is going through. He could be suffering from depression and you just don't know it. A lot of kids who are at a higher social status like to put on faces, and you can easily make assumptions about a person without truly knowing who they are. So I also interviewed Dasha. I'm sure most of you know Dasha. She is a senior. And I asked her a question: when you were being bullied, were you bullied more by guys or girls? And this is just the response that she gave me.
Was it mainly by guys or girls?
It was done by both, but usually it was egged on by girls. But guys would actually bully me without being egged on by girls to be bullied.
With the guys, was it more physical or was it calling you names?
It would only be physical if we were in like gym sports. They would target me if we were playing like dodgeball or like playing like some sort of sport where they could get physical and it'd be like, oh, well, this is just how gym sports is, you know, get up and you're fine.
So that's just one example of how guys can bully girls physically. Like gym sports is a great example. Like they can easily target a girl and have it be okay because it's gym sports. Like nobody's gonna say anything. And then my last argument is knowing how to help. So in my wee video, I go through and act out the steps to how to help somebody going through rejection, because I think that's very important, because if they deal with the rejection when it happens, or if they figure out how to deal with the abuse when it happens, then they're less likely to bully when they get to school. So the steps to helping someone with rejection: the first step is facing the rejection, which basically just means realizing that it happened, being okay with the fact that it happened, and letting yourself feel those emotions without burying them. Like if you need to cry, cry. You know. The second step is knowing when to get involved. This is important because if you badger somebody or start to get involved before they're ready to talk about it, it could cause them to close up and end up not wanting to talk about it at all. So you should really wait for them to come to you and wait until they're ready to talk about it. And then step 3 is listening. So making sure you let them feel heard and don't interrupt them. Let them finish whatever thought they have, because it could cause them to go off track and forget about what they were saying. And then step 4 is help them make a list. Making a list of all their good qualities, everything that they should be happy about, everything that they should be proud that they have in their life, diverts their attention from the negative to the positive. And then step 5 is learning, which basically means letting there be a lesson out of whatever situation happened, making sure that they know what they did wrong, or making sure that they understand why it happened so that it doesn't happen again. And then the steps to helping somebody through abuse. So step 1 is knowing the signs. So the signs for somebody who has been abused at home is being excessively withdrawn socially, being fearful or anxious, always feeling like they're doing something wrong, or shows extreme aggressive behavior. Step 2 is called avoiding denial and remaining calm. So what I mean by that, if somebody is explaining to you an abusive situation at home, try to avoid phrases like, "Are you sure you heard that right? Are you sure this truly happened? Maybe you misread the situation." Because if they feel like whoever they're talking to doesn't believe them, then they'll stop talking about it, because what's the point of talking about it if nobody believes you? Step 3 is don't interrogate. This basically means letting them express their frustrations in their own words, and trying not to ask too many leading questions, because it could easily fluster them or confuse the kid, making it harder for them to continue whatever story they are trying to tell you. And then step 4 is reassurance. So that basically means